If you asked a bunch of people what their favorite animated movies of 2022 were, chances are they would name one of DreamWorks Animation's two films this year, those being The Bad Guys and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Between their stellar animation, lovable characters, and fantastic stories, both of these films are considered to be absolute bangers by fans and critics alike. But while both films are great in their own right, we thought it would be an interesting experiment to try to compare them, listing out each film's strengths, weaknesses, and maybe even figuring out which film reigns supreme as DreamWorks' best movie of the year. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is The Bad Guys vs. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. The first thing we need to mention is spoilers ahead for both films. Additionally, we'd like to remind you all that film opinions are subjective, and even if you don't agree with us, we'd still love to hear your opinions down below. With that said, let's get started. And what better category to start off with than the story? It's the baseline for any film, animated or otherwise, and many argue that it's the factor that makes or breaks many movies. Thankfully, we don't feel like either of our selected movies has to worry about that, as they both have incredibly fun, entertaining, and even emotional stories. Although Last Wish is centered around an adventurous and fantastical journey, while Bad Guys mostly takes place in a modern city, it's obvious based on their plots that both films are very much character-focused pieces. For both Wolf and Puss, their films are meant to chronicle their development and the lessons that they learn, leading them to make a positive change in their life. But of course, we should probably take their genres into account. Obviously, Bad Guys is DreamWorks' take on the heist genre, allowing the film to have some really fun set pieces and heists that, while entertaining in their own right, are able to help get us invested in the characters as we see them react to various situations or interact with each other. There's a fun sense of tension throughout these scenes, and even when the bad guys aren't out on a heist or in the middle of a car chase, the film still takes the time to have good character building moments that pay off later, like Mr. Piranha being shown to be a fan of singing prior to his big musical number, or the almost brotherly squabbles between Snake and Shark over the push pops.
Take it. Oh, now stop crying, buddy.
We also feel like the actual journey of the bad guys becoming good is one that is well done, even if it's admittedly not the deepest story out there. Scenes like Wolf saving the cat or the bad guys reacting to people no longer being so afraid of them give us good insight on their motivations, making it more believable for us to understand when they do finally decide to do good. Even if this turnaround comes off as a bit fast for some characters like Shark, Piranha, and Tarantula, despite them arguably never being that bad in the first place. Throw in an exciting climax filled with more than a few fun twists that fit in perfectly with the genre it's parodying, and you've got yourself a pretty amazing story that, while familiar in some elements, still feels fresh and exciting. As for Last Wish, much like the first Puss in Boots movie, it's very much a spaghetti western mixed with fairy tale fantasy, and this film truly does pull off that combination masterfully. It really does feel like a well-rounded adventure with plenty of action, suspense, and some really good character moments between our protagonists, as well as our antagonists. We also have to admire the film's setting of a magic forest that changes in order to reflect the person who's holding the magic map, becoming a visual representation of their trauma in some cases and providing an environment where they can learn whatever lesson they need to. In that sense, it can almost be compared to something that you would see in a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, which is incredibly cool. What truly makes this film feel so tightly written, however, is just how well things seem to fit into place. Whether it's a more joke-focused scene or one that's more plot-focused or emotionally driven, no scene feels wasted or like it was just put in to fill time. Instead, each scene just builds on top of the other, while at the same time adding to the overall product to create a story that just feels complete. Like with Bad Guys, there are several great callbacks in the dialogue that make for fantastic resolutions, not to mention giving the audience a bit of fun foreshadowing that they can enjoy even more during their rewatch. Overall, both films have incredibly similar strengths that allow them to shine as some of DreamWorks' brightest movies to date. But if we had to say which one we prefer, we have to go with The Last Wish. While Bad Guys may also have a great and fun story, its tendency to sometimes focus a bit more on humor rather than on the plot can sometimes make some arcs or resolutions come off as just a teeny bit rushed, or like they were missing a piece. Last Wish, meanwhile, is very tightly written, with both its plot and its dialogue culminating in what feels like one of the best scripts from the studio, matching the quality of movies like Shrek 2. Moving into our next category, it's time to take a look at the characters. Both films have massive casts, and we feel that for many audience members, there's at least one character in the bunch that's relatable enough, or likable enough to attach themselves to. Starting with our protagonists, we have to say that when it comes to the bad guys, Wolf, Snake, and Diane are all excellent characters in their own right. Wolf is your typical smooth talker, almost reminiscent of someone like Nick Wilde from Zootopia. He can be clever and even a bit manipulative at times, but is also shown to be a total dork. What's more, while he's the most good of the bad guys and is the first to want to change, he's also one of the most flawed characters in the film, having his moments of selfishness and impulsiveness that help naturally invoke some of the more personal conflicts in the film. But even with these flaws, Wolf's more likable traits, such as his loyalty, his love for his friends, and his determination, make him very endearing. As for Snake and Diane, while they may not be the main focus of the movie, they're still strong characters in their own right with many likable features. Snake especially is able to be the so-called worst one of the bad guys, without going too far.
I don't have any friends.
His more mischievous moments come off more as endearing than frustrating, and by the end you're sympathizing with his reluctance to change, understanding why he still wouldn't trust the outside world, to see him as anything different even if he may want to believe in his friends and in himself. When he does become good, it's still done in a believable and, fittingly enough, Snake-like way. Really the only characters you could maybe take points off for are the rest of the bad guys. Shark, Piranha, and Tarantula. They certainly aren't bad characters, with each one having their own fun shtick that allows them to stand out. That said, they don't really drive the story like Wolf, Snake, or Diane do, making them feel just a bit lacking when it comes to development. But there's nothing wrong with characters who are technically flat. After all, just look at Perito from Last Wish. Pulling double duty as both the film's comedy relief and emotional heart, he is the only character who doesn't need to change or learn a lesson of sorts, leaving him to instead be good support for other characters like Puss and Kitty. As such, he's very lovable and sweet, and while some elements of him may remind us of Donkey, he still stands out on his own. Similarly, Kitty Softpaws is also able to stand out as well. She's confident in her thieving, but she also has her own personal issues that the film allows her to get past, giving her almost as much of an arc as Puss, while still letting her be a really fun character that adds a nice bit of a snarky edge to the team friendship duo. Finally, we have the titular Puss in Boots himself, and while he's just as enjoyable as he was in previous Shrek films, some fans have pointed out how his character has shifted a bit. While Puss has also had a streak of arrogance and ego in him, these qualities admittedly get turned up a bit in order to help sell this particular film's story better, making him reminiscent of other arrogant heroes like Lego Batman. Thankfully, this added ego, while perhaps a bit different from Puss's other portrayals in the series, doesn't take away from his other qualities. Though he may see glory and adventure, Puss is still the same honorable and heroic cat he's always been, still going out of his way to help and save others. For these reasons, we're able to accept the slight change in his character. When looking at our two sets of protagonists, it may be tempting to go with the old quality over quantity, since Bad Guys arguably has more of what people might call filler characters. But these characters can still add a lot to the film, even if they themselves may be a bit underdeveloped. Additionally, we feel that Wolf, Diane, and Snake are just that strong as main characters, each of them bringing their own perspective that relates to the film's story and themes as well. So we personally have to go with the bad guys on this one. Still, that's only one side of the coin, as we still have to look at the film's antagonists and villains. In some ways, this may be a bit unfair, in that Bad Guys is somewhat outnumbered in this category, but we would still say that both films technically only have one main villain apiece, those being Professor Marmalade and Jack Horner. Really, both of these characters are about as similar as you can get, being wealthy jerks who are incredibly petty, self-centered, and admittedly pretty hilarious in just how unapologetically evil they are. John Mulaney's blunt performance as Jack further adds to the humor of the character, allowing us to laugh at just just how absolutely horrible he is. The dude threatened to shoot a puppy in the face with no hesitation. On the other side of things, Marmalade is technically a twist villain, but because this twist happens midway instead of in the very last act or in the climax, he gets more than enough time to really ham it up as the bad guy, complete with getting a wild new haircut, boasting about his evil plans, and attempting to kill Snake out of sheer pettiness. We should point out that as of lately, many animation fans have craved the campy and unapologetically evil villains of the Disney Renaissance, wishing for those types of villains to make a comeback out of fatigue for modern Disney third act twist villains and sympathetic/redeemed villains. Safe to say, both of these bad guys fit that craving to a T. But of course, Last Wish has two other characters who, while not fully villainous, are still very much antagonists. You first have Goldie and the Three Bears crime family, who basically end up as the film's second group of lovable protagonists by the end. In a sense, Goldie falls into that more modern villain category of being somewhat more redeemable. As for Death, while his grudge against Puss is very much personal, he's also just a force of nature that's doing his job. For as much as Death wanted to kill Puss, even tormenting and taunting him a bit along the way, he stops himself from killing the cat once he sees that Puss has truly learned his lesson. The fact that Death throws a bit of a hissy fit when he realizes this, clearly still wanting to kill Puss out of pettiness but not actually doing so because he no longer deserves it in his eyes, shows that he's not nearly as villainous and evil as he looks. He's just a guy who's willing to go to extremes when he wants to teach someone a lesson. Either way, it's a pretty nuanced take on a concept like death, allowing him to be both interesting and understandable, yet still terrifying. While we still love our simple, rotten to the core villains like Marmalade and Jack Horner, the fact that Last Wish puts in the extra effort to include two extra antagonists that are able to add to the film in their own way without making it feel overstuffed is quite impressive, and as such, it wins this category hands down. But with both films being such strong character-focused pieces, having lessons that these characters have to then learn in order to improve their lives, we feel that it's only fitting to discuss the themes of these movies. With the bad guys, there's a simple sort of "it's good to be good" message, making it seem like a relatively shallow theme to those who may not want to bother with looking deeper into it. But beyond all the talk of being a good guy or bad guy, there are themes of not just morality, but also identity, perspective, and redemption. With our three core characters, Wolf, Diane, and Snake, we're essentially told the theme of self-improvement, with each of them choosing to change, either out of wanting to seek happiness for themselves or out of love for their friends and those who truly believe in them. After all, it's Diane who gives Wolf the advice of changing not for them but for you, and that even if others don't believe that he can be anything more than a villain, he should still try to be the type of person that he wants to be. While yes, this may also be a relatively simple message, it's still one that's incredibly important, especially to those who may relate to the bad guys. The film also champions a message of being able to redeem yourself without completely changing who you are. The bad guys and Diane are able to still be themselves without changing who they are at their core, using their skills to save the day. All in all, we feel like this film delivers the message in a strong way, while not feeling too heavy-handed. But let's shift from talks of morality to another M word, mortality. So yeah, clearly the movie about a cat wanting to regain his 9 lives is going to have some themes relating to the meaning and value of life. How it's not the adventures we have or the glory we gain, but the people we spend our lives with and the bonds we form with them. The film also encourages people to still be cautious even while living life to the fullest. Certain risks, however, such as opening up to others or taking a step forward in a relationship, can be worth taking and can add to a person's overall life and happiness. All of these themes are given to us through Puss and his arc, as well as through his interactions with Death. But the other characters are able to add to this theme as well. For one, we have Goldie and her desire to have a proper human family despite already having a bear family that loves her. This too ties into the idea that it's the bonds we form with those we love, whoever they may be, that truly define our lives. We also have Jack, who doesn't seem to value human life at all. We see this in how callous he is towards his baker's dozen soldiers, not caring at all if they die. Because Jack puts so much value into his fame, status, and power, instead of choosing to value value the lives of the only people he could call companions, he can never truly be satisfied, thus sealing his doom. Really, both themes are incredibly valuable and good for kids and adults alike to keep in mind, so it is really hard to pick a winner. However, we feel like Last Wish is able to execute its themes in a way that is both poignant and incredibly relatable to older audiences especially, so it's gonna have to take our vote, even if this particular category was incredibly close. Moving on to something perhaps a bit more subjective but still very important. Next we'll discuss the soundtracks of each film. Interestingly, of all the categories that we're gonna be discussing, this is the one where we see the most differences between each film. Bad Guys is very much a modern film through and through. Because of this, we get a few more pop culture songs included to help set the exciting tone while also giving the film even more of a personality. These songs range from Can't Stop Won't Stop's Stop Drop Roll, which almost serves as a rebellious anthem of sorts for the gang's opening heist,
Webs, hit it.
to Howlin' For You by the Black Keys, to the exciting and energetic Go by the Chemical Brothers. As for the film's original score, it can feel almost jazzy in some scenes, occasionally throwing in stuff like electric guitars, violins, or even a choir in some cases, as we hear during the scene where Wolf rescues the cat or when the gang is driving off the bridge to try and rescue Snake. And of course, we can't forget the film's original song, Good Tonight, which is not only incredibly catchy, but also adds a ton to the scene it's from. And then you have Last Wish, which features music you would typically hear in westerns with a bit of Spanish flair thrown in. We only get one real use of a pop culture song, This Is the End by The Doors, which is played during Puss's introduction to retirement life. This isn't typical of a movie in the Shrek franchise, although we can't say that we missed the lack of these songs too much, as its original score is still able to do plenty. We again have to mention the song Fearless Hero, which is just as catchy as Good Tonight, while also featuring some subtle foreshadowing, specifically in the line, Who's never been touched by a blade. It just makes Puss's first fight with death and the humbling he receives all the more satisfying to watch. For as different as they are, both films have spectacular soundtracks that each add to their respective movies in their own way. We truly do love Fearless Hero, and we also really like certain motifs such as change in the music whenever death appears or Puss's hero theme. However, while it may seem more typical and traditional for a DreamWorks film, we have to go with The Bad Guys for this category, as we feel it's the more memorable soundtrack overall. Finally, we have the elements that attracted so many people to these films in the first place when they saw the trailers. That being the art and animation. Both of these films serve as a huge step up for DreamWorks, being some of the most stylized that we've ever seen from the studio. Clearly, Sony Animation's Into the Spider-Verse played a big inspiration for both movies, but in the case of Bad Guys, it wasn't the only inspiration. As many have already pointed out, the way the characters in Bad Guys move is reminiscent of the anime Lupin III, while the design of the humans is similar to Akira Toriyama's art style, allowing for some additional stylization. There are so many little touches that bring these characters to life. With Wolf, we love how he tends to talk with his hands, using different gestures and motions as he speaks. We also see his fangs pop out more when he gets angry, and we even see his eyes go red at one point, playing into why others may still see him as scary. The character animation on Snake, however, just takes it to a whole other level. While studios like Disney have animated serpent characters well in the past, this film is pretty much a masterclass in how to animate a character with no arms. His movements and poses are just so full of energy and creativity that it can be hard to look away, and the decision to constantly switch up what his teeth look like, depending on what he's saying or the expression that he's making, further adds to the Snake's uniqueness. Finally, we have to say that while the heists themselves are great, it's the car chases that are the true highlights of the film. They're exciting, having a good balance of grounded and impossible, culminating in sequences that keep audience members on the edge of their seats. But while they may have only came out within a year of each other, we can still admit that Last Wish showed even more of an improvement within the animation. Its action and fight scenes are just impeccable, being right up there with the Kung Fu Panda movies in terms of both choreography and creativity. Moments like Puss and Kitty dancing with each other, or Puss taking down a giant single-handedly, really are sights to behold. While other scenes, like when Puss is in the cave with the reflections of his former lives, are simple yet incredibly effective, providing some really really strong imagery that is able to emphasize all of what the scene is trying to say. Naturally, each of the encounters with Death are also really great in that they use atmospheric lighting perfectly. The moments where Death's eyes briefly go from red and black to red and white are especially effective, often adding to his intimidating nature. That actually leads us into our next point regarding Last Wish, that being its color palette. Not only is the film brightly colored without coming off as too much, it's just gorgeous in general. There are several moments where we'll get a change in a scene's color, going from bright to dark, and watching these scenes in particular truly makes us feel like we're watching an art book come to life. To sum it up, Last Wish essentially took all of what made The Bad Guys great animation-wise and turned it up to 11. So it shouldn't be all too surprising that it's Last Wish that takes the win in this category. And with Last Wish successfully taking some of the biggest categories in this discussion, we feel like it's truly the better film, having what we feel to be the best story, the best themes, the best antagonists, and the best animation. But like we said, we have a lot of love for The Bad Guys as well, and wouldn't blame anyone who felt it was the better of the two movies. Regardless of how you feel, it doesn't change the fact that DreamWorks Animation definitely ruled this year, and we really can't wait to see what they decide to release in 2023 and beyond. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with us, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell, and binge our Puss in Boots and Bad Guys videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.